To most audiences, the story of Robert Downey Jr. goes something like this. He was a brilliant actor in movies that people generally didn't go to see, he hit a rough patch, he did some time, got out, and a few years later Marvel said, hey, you should be Iron Man, and now it's all good. But to many film buffs, Downey's rebirth actually began 3 years earlier when he starred in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the excellent directing debut of infamous action screenwriter Shane Black. So it's almost kismet that Iron Man's return to solo stardom in the wake of conquering the world as a member of the Avengers once more finds Black in the director's chair. I'll say this up front, I was probably too kind to Iron Man 2. It's still not a bad movie, but both it and its predecessor are in retrospect flawed but serviceable endeavors mainly getting by on Downey's star power and the promises they had to make about what was to come. Iron Man 3, then, is a movie with a lot to prove, not only that the Avengers-adjacent Marvel heroes are still going to be interesting on their own, but that Tony Stark in particular is still worth building a whole movie around now that Downey is skirting the edges of Johnny Depp-level overexposure. Good news, then, that Iron Man 3 isn't just a good sequel, but a good movie, far and away the best of its own trilogy and probably the strongest individual Marvel movie after Captain America, and that it even stands up on its own as another distinctly auteur work from Shane Black as a welcome indicator that the forthcoming Marvel films will not be abandoning the strong individualistic quirks that made their initial push such a success in the wake of their Disney assimilation. This is the first time I can remember that a mainstream movie had to be a sequel to two different films, tasked with not only finishing up the loose ends of Tony Stark's development in Iron Man 2, but working out how Iron Man's little corner of existence even works following the world-reshaping events of the Avengers. The story's deft solutions to both problems is, ingeniously, to make that question the central theme of the film. On top of all his other lingering physical and psychological baggage, Stark is now suffering PTSD flashbacks related to his dimension-crossing near-death experience a year ago, and even his team's victory has left him feeling powerfully insecure. Having fought alongside gods, monsters, and super soldiers, he's feeling inadequate as a guy whose abilities are reliant on mechanical suits, so advanced he now doesn't even have to wear them to operate them. Much like the first installment, the bigger story is explicitly grounded in post-9/11 allegory, but whereas Part 1 was all about catharsis, this one is about the uneasiness of living in the aftermath of a catastrophe that changes the world overnight. Characters eerily use New York as a universal shorthand for Loki's thwarted invasion in Avengers, as in, New York changed everything, or nothing's been the same since New York. Subtle. Colonel Rhodes' War Machine armor has been repainted Captain America style and rechristened Iron Patriot as a symbol of reassuring strength. Happy Hogan has become Stark Industries' hyper-paranoid security chief, new CEO Pepper Potts is slapping down any research that might smell of weaponization, and Stark himself has gone superhero survivalist, stocking a literal bunker with dozens of multi-purpose combat-ready Iron Man armors and alienating himself from his friends and family. In other words, the post-Avengers United States and Iron Man's circle in particular are a perfect position to be thrown into chaos by the arrival of Sir Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin, a terrorist mastermind ostensibly connected to the Al-Qaeda-esque Ten Rings group from the first film, but of otherwise mysterious origins. Seemingly Middle Eastern but cloaked in Oriental iconography with a flair for viral media, he's Bin Laden, Kim Jong-il, and anarchist hackers all rolled into one, the sum total of Western post-9/11 nightmares made flesh, with superhuman henchmen at his command and the inexplicable ability to carry out suicide bombings without bombs. When one such attack hits too close to home and drives Iron Man to brazenly call the enemy out, he ends up stripped of all his tools, tech, and weapons, except for the intellect that he no longer fully trusts, left on his own to solve the Mandarin mystery which he suspects may tie back to Guy Pearce as the suspiciously re-emerged colleague Aldrich Killian, ultimately accomplishing a more satisfying midlife crisis superhero fights back arc in a little over an hour than Dark Knight Rises managed in 165 minutes. Impressively, the mystery stuff holds up surprisingly well given the material. The Mandarin is Iron Man's most iconic classic-era nemesis, and there are characters and elements called from the more recent Extremis storyline, but they're arranged in a satisfying original way. There's a big gotcha twist about midway through, which I will not spoil, and you shouldn't either, that's at once brilliant, funny, and the most subversive thing to happen in the Marvel movieverse, while the actual mechanics of how the big evil plot works is just about the darkest thing you could probably get away with in a big all-audiences blockbuster, as in, I expect people to get mad about this. It's not a perfect movie, of course, but the flubs are pretty minor. The script leans on the conceit of randomly malfunctioning prototype armors for generating tension a little much, and Rebecca Hall's character falls a few lines short of being anything beyond a plot device. A second-act subplot with Stark befriending a troubled kid was, to me, one of the rare instances of that trope actually working really well, but if you're allergic to movie children in all forms, he probably won't change your mind. There's also some nagging loose ends, like a villain who busts out a cool and ultra-useful superpower that later on he seems to forget that he has. Artificial tension or not, though, the action scenes are intense. Shane Black is one of the godfathers of modern action comedy already, but Stark's half-armored and improv weapon fights here are Golden Age Jackie Chan awesome, and a big mid-air rescue sequence is the kind of spectacle I thought we'd have to wait for a different superhero movie to see. The film takes a bold risk in introducing a wholly different level of sci-fi into the Iron Man proceedings, and the big finale pulls a neat trick of being an involving, character-driven set-piece with real stakes, while also simultaneously being the biggest and most shameless toy commercial moment that any Marvel release has yet attempted. MVP honors, though, have to go to Gwyneth Paltrow. Though she can't help but be too often placed in the role of Killjoy to Downey's clowning, the series has been actively building Pepper Potts into something bigger than a damsel in distress this whole time, and finally seeing it pay off like gangbusters is a major thrill. Best of all, we finally get some resolution. Yes, obviously Stark will be back for Avengers 2, and they'll likely grab him up for assorted cameos or even another Iron Man movie, but if this was to be the big finish for the franchise, it'd actually be a perfect send-off. Either way, we finally got a great 2013 summer blockbuster, and you should absolutely go out and see it. See you. Okay, you want me to talk about the big twist, right? Well, tough. The movie just came out in the US, so I'm not going to do it here. I'll probably do something more in-depth about it on Tuesday's Big Picture. But people really should get a chance to watch the movie first. What I will say is, I understand why people expected I would hate it, but I actually thought it was kind of awesome. Is it a big change from the comics? Yeah, it is, but it's a fun and interesting change that makes the movie's storyline more interesting, and I'll take that over fidelity. This is a different animal than, say, the Dark Knight series, where they radically altered stuff to be less bizarre, and in doing so made it a lot less interesting. Since in this case, the movie is already a lot more bizarre and out there than the other two Iron Man movies put together, and the gotcha here ends up being one of the more fun ideas the Marvel movies have played with thus far. Okay? Alright, go see the movie.